Ladies and gentlemen, debate is not debate if it's not on Kenya's #1 debate platform, where 10 regional champions are fighting for the title of the next Great Debater. This is the Great Debaters Contest Season 8. I am your host, Chris Boru.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga. Battling it out today on the motion, internationally constituted bodies should be assigned to combat corruption globally.
Well, in the proposition, we have Alidina Visram High School.
And in the opposition are the ladies from Loreto Girls High School. Proposer number 1, you have 3 minutes to make a statement.
My name is Farouk Rajab from the Alidina Visram High School, proposing the motion internationally constituted bodies should be assigned to combat corruption globally. Now, internationally constituted bodies are bodies of law that govern the legal relations between or among states or nations. Should is a word that is used to show what is right or appropriate. To combat is simply to take action to reduce or prevent something bad or undesirable. Corruption is dishonest, illegal, or fraudulent conduct, especially of people in authority. Before I get to my points, I want us to get a clear picture of what corruption does to us. Now, the World Bank took to its website this year that it considers corruption a threat to reaching SDG goal number 1 of no poverty by 2030. Also, according to the United Nations, corruption costs at least 5% of the world's gross domestic product, which is estimated to be $2.6 trillion US. On the United Nations Development Program website, $100 billion US are paid in bribes per year. $100 billion US is being lost to bribes in a year. This is according to the World Bank Institute. Then corruption can cost a country up to 17% of its GDP. This was backed up by Asian Development Bank. Why do we say that internationally constituted bodies should be assigned to combat corruption globally? Corruption has been a big problem. Its effects are known, its effects are seen. And we cannot take it for granted that if not eradicated, then reduce it in the society in order to create a better place to live in. Now, internationally constituted bodies provide necessary assistance and expertise to combat this corruption. According to the Transparency International website, an anti-corruption summit was held in London 2016, which comprised of 43 government and 6 international organizations, issuing a bold declaration against corruption and making 648 commitments. Now, Transparency International sampled 453 commitments from the 648. This is being done by the end of 2018, this year. Now, recently, Transparency International has launched a new report on a global package tracker with the results on their findings for these commitments. So progress is being made. Progress is being made with international corporations. Lastly, these people are professionals. From the anti-corruption summit that took place in 2016, there was formed an International Anti-Corruption Coordination Center, which was launched in 2017, bringing together specialist law enforcement officers from multiple agencies around the world. So we are getting a solution to this problem of corruption. That's why I strongly believe that internationally constituted bodies should be assigned to combat corruption globally. Thank you.
First opposer, you have 3 minutes to present your case.
Melanie Fain, Loreto High School, Limuru, strongly debunking the motion that states internationally constituted bodies should be assigned to combat corruption globally. International constituted bodies are organizations with an international membership, scope, or presence. Examples: International Monetary Fund, International Criminal Court, United Nations, International Court of Justice, and many others. Should means very necessary. To be assigned is to be given the responsibility to do something. To combat is to fight. And corruption means the dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power, typically involving bribery, or better yet, it's the abuse of public office for private gain. Globally means worldwide. Okay, to nip this debate, before we go on in the bud, what we're trying to say is the international constituted bodies can actually do it, but it's better if the nations do it on their own. If SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, is to be a reality, then let nations fight corruption, their own issues. Now, the challenges that internationally constituted bodies would face if they took corruption into their own hands. The first one, we know our own weak spots. Now, an article by the World Bank, note, an internationally constituted body, posted on October 4th, 2018 stated that successful anti-corruption efforts are often led by a coalition of concerned politicians and senior government officials, the private sector, and by citizens, communities, and civil society organizations. Now note, they didn't say by an internationally constituted bodies. They clearly pointed out that successful anti-corruption efforts are clearly run by people who come from the same country. Then another internationally constituted body stated, the Transparency International Index, they said if they use a scale of 0 to 100, where 0 is very corrupt and 100 is very clean, this year, the index found that more than 2/3 of countries score below 50 with an average score of 43. Unfortunately, compared to recent years, this poor performance is nothing new. They're used to this. Governments are corrupt, and there's nothing that can go on in a country if the government does not approve of it. These implementations to curb corruption that come from these international constituted bodies will have to pass through the government. Now, what makes us think the government will just come out clearly and say, you know what, this is how we carry out corruption. So you know what, how about you eradicate the hand that feeds us? That's not how it works. We know our own weak spots. We know where the corruption is, so we know how to handle it better. My second point, lack of cooperation. Another international constituted body said, the body is World Development Report 2017. It identified that coordination, commitment, and cooperation are core functions required to ensure rules and resources yield desired development outcomes. Now, hold that thought. Inviting an outsider to handle our corruption issues is basically giving them power to control our public systems, because that's where the corruption is. And when you talk about giving someone else power, there's a strong word coming up, and that word is colonialism. No citizen will sit down and give themselves to colonialism. It's basically calling for hostility from citizens. And if that is the case, then of course these internationally constituted bodies will face hostility and lack of cooperation in the end. So with that, please listen to our plea. This is better handled by their own nations. Thank you.
Second proposer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
My name is Saleh Ali from Alidina, Visram. But before I go further in proposing this motion, I would like to ask a few questions. What about SDG 17, which is Partnership for the Goals? You talked about SDG 16, but you don't know this, that a number of countries were involved with coming up of these SDGs, which is most likely what we are going to talk about here, which is internationally constituted bodies should be assigned to combat corruption globally. So one, why should they be assigned to do this? What better way than doing it? Because international organizations, they bring a platform for which brings about pooling of ideas, which means people come together to bring ideas, different ideas. They say 2 heads are better than 1, but what about 30 different heads? What are they going to be able to accomplish? Think about it. For example, take this nation, this organization, the European Union. It helped Poland climb down its corruption ladder. Poland, even though Poland had a stiff with the EU still intervened and helped Poland climb down its corruption ladder, and they have gone drastically down. They have reduced the corruption rate in the country, which has not only pushed the economy further, but has helped them develop. Bodies like the UN, EU, EAC, and many more accomplish their objectives through discussion from its member states. And this is unachievable if a country stands alone. As you are saying, you are talking about sovereignty. What is sovereignty without coming together? No man is an island. And I say again, no man is an island. On to my second point. I would like to talk about international organizations. They provide a larger forum for publicizing corruption. How is this? Corruption, Corruption long time ago was a you problem, but now it's an us problem. By us, I mean the entire world. To be truly honest to ourselves and transformative, efforts to end global corruption and achieve sustainable development must have been at their core to full participation, involvement at all stages. This is only brought about through international organizations, which is coming together of different nations so that this is done. This is only achievable if we come together. Why think of being independent, yet you can join hands and be a better workforce in developing your goals, and not only fighting corruption, and even fight other matters as well. All the efforts will not be like flogging a dead horse unless everyone is on board, and a better way to engage our beloved young people, which is everyone that is involved in those international organizations. So please, I would like to stress this again. No man is an island. No man is an island. Thank you.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
Beg your pardon. 2 heads are better than one. What about 40 million heads that know the problem in a nation? What about 40 million of us coming together to solve our own corruption? Isn't that better than 2 heads? From Loreto High School, Limuru, Salim Odhoni strongly opposing the motion that says international constituted bodies should be assigned to combat corruption globally. What we are trying to say is that as a nation, we have the ability to deal with our own corruption better than anyone else from without our nation. We are saying that we can do it because we know our problems, where they started out, where they are going, what sector of our economy is being affected, and how we can solve it. So no matter how much equipment we do not have or how good we may not be, we are still the best people that are able to solve our problems because we are the ones who created these problems. And what better a way to solve a problem than to go back to the people who brought it about? So you talk all about all the advantages of internationally constituted bodies, but what is in it for them? Why are they coming to help us? What do they stand to gain? Do not tell me they are doing it from the bottom of their hearts to help us. They have a motive. Most of the international bodies actually aim at coming to a nation and in the disguise of helping us combat corruption, come and interfere with our political ideologies, hence effectively interfering with our democratic right, telling us who cannot and who can be our leader. So you still want to allow these internationally constituted bodies to come to my country and tell me who I cannot choose as my president because, God forbid to them, he's not the right person. Are you trying to tell me that at the cost of fighting corruption, I will not be able to vote for the person I want? Is that really what you're trying to tell us when you say that we should allow them to come here? The second thing, it may breed over-reliance on their aid, that every time we have a problem as a nation, we simply run to UN, come and help us solve, because you helped us solve our corruption problem. Why can't you help us solve this problem and this problem and this problem? This will lead to a cycle whereby we will never be able to solve our own problems, which will just make us to be over-reliant on them, who might not even be that anti-corrupt, but we are saying that you cannot tell us that we must first go to someone outside while we ourselves can solve our problems. The wearer of the shoe knows where it pinches. So, as a nation, we have the ability, we have the resources, we have the know-how on how to solve our own corruption. So why should we bring internationally constituted bodies that will come and do more harm than good in the long run, that will leave us worse than they found us?
The proposers have been asked, how do we make sure that the players who we give the responsibility to solve our corruption problems don't manipulate our systems to their advantage? The opposers, on the other hand, have been asked, how do we entrust the creators of the problem to solve the same problem in our countries? Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes to respond.
My name is Thomas Muhwana, and I'm here to propose the motion that says internationally constituted bodies should be assigned to combat corruption globally. So I'll answer the question put up by the lady from Loreto. Well, the Gaddafi question, that's a conspiracy theory. You're not sure who killed him. What is there on the network is that he was killed by his own people through mob justice. So that's a conspiracy theory. Get us the source, and then we'll believe that it really happened. But when you say that these internationally constituted bodies can be manipulated by powerful nations, well, there's something called veto power. And the US recently wanted the UN to back it up with changing the location of its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Well, the UN Security Council vetoed the vote, so the US could not manipulate the votes and the council in general. So I'll start with the first. I'll tell you something. All the ladies in here, if you imagine going into a supermarket and then looking for your favorite cologne. You saw it on TV, it had some nice advert, and then you march to the place and it has a price tag that you can only dream of. You are gob-stricken, downtrodden, and you live there feeling low. But imagine friends coming in and deepening your pockets. Now the lady we are talking about here is Kenya. I'll zoom in into our country. So the Transparency International, which is globally managed, it is receiving contributions from Germany, 660,000, according to their site, transparencyinternational.org. It receives $660,000 from Germany, $600,000 from the US, $450,000 from Italy, and $230,000 from Mexico. That's $1,940,000 worldwide. Now, ladies, please tell me if Kenya can raise that amount of money to fight corruption. What internationally constituted bodies do is they deepen the pockets of the country. You need expertise, and this expertise is not only local expertise, which brings us to our next point. Well, we need to close all the loopholes if you're to stop corruption totally. Most of these people who are corrupt in our country launder the money and store them in offshore accounts outside the country, in tax havens, because what they're trying to do is to evade the tax they're supposed to pay in the country. So a recent expose by the International Consortium of Journalists, which was also constituted by 100 media houses from all countries, which makes it global, it uncovered something called Paradise Papers. Now, Paradise Papers uncovered something interesting, and if you want it localized, our former Deputy Chief Justice was involved and entangled in that. She had offshore accounts and she was storing them outside in the Isle of Man, managed by a law firm called Appleby. Now, these tax havens can be stopped, and it was recently stopped when Kenya signed a document with the Swiss government to return all the money stored in those accounts there back to Kenya. Now this is Kenya and Switzerland and the UK, not Kenya alone. That's stopping corruption by coming together. Now I'll end with one thing. Corruption is a cancer that steals from poor and eats away at governance and moral fabric and destroys trust. This was by Robert Zoellick. Well, if you want to stop corruption, we are not going to do it alone. This country does not have enough funds. We have to reach out there, find the people who are laundering their money away, and get them back to Kenya. Then we can extradite them. And finally, nationalism is a betrayal of patriotism. So saying we are going to stay as Kenya alone, that's putting yourself in a bubble. It's not going to work. Thank you.
Third opposer, you have 3 minutes to respond to your question.
On April 30th, 2014, these two people, Karen Alter and Juliet Sorenson, they wrote an article in US News. And the heading of their article was, "Let nations, its nations, and not the world, prosecute corruption." Let nations and not the world prosecute corruption. I'm opposer number 3, Fraser Wendy, opposing the motion. Internationally constituted bodies should be assigned to combat corruption globally. Now, I've been asked a question. How do we curb corruption, yet our leaders are corrupt? Now, I'll just begin by reading what our president said at 7:20 p.m. on 21st of August 2018. So this is what President Uhuru said. "We will win this fight. We will make it expensive for anyone stealing from Kenyans and denying them services like education, health, that they work so hard to receive from their government." So why don't we just trust our government on this? Why don't we just trust our government on this? If Singapore trusted the government on this, and trust you me, right now they were one of the most corrupt, and right now they are ranked 6th out of 180 countries in the list of corruption. That means they're moving higher. They're among the least corrupt. So this is what Singapore does, if that is what you want Kenya to employ. So they remove opportunities for corruption. You can do that. They give effective administration. That can also be done. Streamlining cumbersome administration. That was done by Japan. As Kenya, we can do this. So now, on to my point. Now, I just realized something really funny. There is corruption in internationally constituted bodies. Can you imagine? What are our proposers telling us? What are you trying to tell us? Can't you just put your house in order first? Your house is not in order. There is corruption in UN, according to the economies. There is corruption at the heart of United Nations. And this is an investigation completed in Monday, August 8th, 2009, and also in 2005. There's this man called Benon Savan, the former UN head of oil and food program in Iraq, corruptly, the word is corruptly benefited from kickbacks while he was in charge. And why did he do this? That is whatever he did, that is what gave Iraq President Saddam Hussein the ability to use oil concessions as a way to buy friends and influence. So as much as these people, as much as we are trusting international bodies, the people in international bodies have their own origin. They have their own countries. Who knows what their interests are? Secondly, the next person, this corruption in ECOWAS, and that is according to ResearchGate, April 2015. Faster, according to Spiegel Online, Ocampo was bribed by a Libyan billionaire. Ocampo is one of the most famous investigators of ICC. Ocampo was bribed by a Libyan billionaire. That is on Thursday, 10th, 5th, 2017, 2:15 p.m. So what am I saying? Let nations, not the world, prosecute corruption. We can do this, Kenyans. Thank you.
Proposers, you have 1 minute to make a final submission.
Speaking of Saddam Hussein, a company was linked with Al-Bashar Trading Company Limited, was listed under the United Nations sanctions list. That's because Saddam Hussein was a corrupt leader and he wanted to be sanctioned because he was putting the money outside. That's UN stepping in, not his country stepping in. And the question of Ocampo, with all due respect, the guy was part of ICC, not Transparency International, not meant to battle corruption. So let's put it in our context. We cannot fight corruption alone. I'll repeat what President Emmanuel Macron said in the centenary of World War I 5 weeks ago. He said, nationalism is the betrayal of patriotism. Now, if you are clear patriots, let's join hands with other nations because that's the only way. No country can survive on its own. The UN is feeding people in Africa, and corruption is feeding other people who are not supposed to be fed. So if the money is supposed to go to the right people and the right pockets, those who earn it, then Transparency International and the UN and EU is the right place, not a country full of people who are not impartial. That's partiality. The UN maintains impartiality and objectivity, and that's what we need. Nationalism is never the way. Thank you.
Opposers, you have 1 minute to make a final submission.
You have heavily defended Ocampo, saying he's from ICC. Isn't ICC an internationally constituted body that has to be involved in fighting corruption? Okay. Anyway, you've talked about SDG 17 and I talked about SDG 16, partnership goals. Why make it biased and say it has to be between international constituted bodies and nations? It is both ways. Even in nations, we have to have partnership. We can do it better on our own. Or did you mean to say that we have to depend on them to carry out our own issues or fix our own issues? No, we can do it. Or what was the whole purpose of independence? We are an independent nation. We know our own problems. We can solve it better. No one is trying to say that they can't do it. In fact, maybe they can do it really well. But you know what? We can do it better. Do not derail us from the right train of thought. Let nations do what they're supposed to do. It's their own battle. Let's not make it a big international scene. Corruption is better fought by nations themselves. Thank you.
For Alidina Visram, one of the things that the panel of judges liked about your submissions is you have references and you have read them and you can articulate them as you speak, particularly your third debater. That's Thomas. So you're able to embed a lot of that in your submissions. The challenge for Loreto, especially for Fraser, was that you kept on reading, which showed that you hadn't, mastered your content in such a way that you can use that to defend the arguments that you're making. One comment that I'd like to make is that when you come back to make your final submission, when you're given 1 minute to come back and make your final submission, that's not the time for you to start introducing new ideas unless it's very punchy. It's not the time for you to respond to questions. It's a time for you have 1 minute, it's a do or die, to convince us, with this, why we should actually side with your side of the motion. But again, having said that, I think this was a debate, and may the best team win. Yeah, thanks.
The girls, we know our challenges and we can sort them out. I wish maybe you could have just cited a few, giving us maybe some statistics from a few countries, how some issues have been sorted. I think they're there. It's not that we don't have them, yeah? But no, when you just give us just a blanket statement that we know our challenges and we can sort them out, at times it becomes tricky, especially if you're seeing some issues that are not being sorted out and they are still glaring. Corruption that we are talking about is actually one of them. So if it is possible, actually, if you could have cited, and there are those statistics out here that you could have cited, I think that would have would have lent great support to your argument. Yeah? Talking about corruption, I was just being reminded of what has happened, which I thought actually in agreement with what you people are talking about. A case of the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission trying to arrest some corrupt people somewhere, only to be rescued by the policemen. They were arresting policemen, and the policemen themselves, their colleagues, rescued them. So it's still a hard topic. I don't know. At the end of the day, we'll know how to go about it. Thank you.
Down to the numbers. Alidina Visram High School, the judges awarded you 69.3%. Let's give them a round of applause. Loreto Limuru High School, the judges awarded you 67.6%. Let's give them a round of applause. Hence making Alidina Visram High School the winners of this debate.
Congratulations to both teams. We appreciate appreciate you for the effort that you've made. We would like to also appreciate our sponsors, Blaze by Safaricom and Brand Kenya Board, for making this possible. And to all the schools that have participated, thank you for your time and giving your students to come and take part in this amazing debate platform. That's it for today. Keep the conversation going across our social media platforms. The hashtag is GDC for SDGs. I have been your host, Esperancia Kapanga.
And I am Chris Buru. Stay tuned.